What did you see?
In the quiet town of Elmwood, men vanish without a trace when they hear a soft whisper calling their name, but only if they turn around. In the small town of Elmwood, life was very normal. People woke up every day, went to work, came home, and slept. Nothing exciting happened most of the time. The town had old houses, a main street with a few shops, and a park in the center where kids played. Elmwood was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and fields. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. Victor was a tailor in Elmwood. He had a small shop where he fixed clothes for people. Victor was a simple man, about 30 years old, with short brown hair and a friendly face. He lived alone in a small house behind his shop. His best friends were Mike and Tom. Mike worked at the local grocery store, and Tom was a mechanic who fixed cars. They met every evening at the town diner to talk about nothing important. One day, the three friends were sitting at the diner, eating burgers. The diner was old, with red seats and a counter where the owner, old Mr. Harris, served food. The walls had pictures of the town from long ago. "Did you hear about that old story?" Mike asked, taking a bite of his burger. His voice was low, like he was sharing a secret. "What story?" Victor asked, not really interested. He was thinking about a pair of pants he had to sew. "The shadow woman," Mike said. "They say she comes at night during the full moon. She whispers your name, and if you turn around, she takes you away. No one ever sees you again." Tom laughed. "That's just a silly legend. My grandpa told me that when I was a kid. It's to scare boys into staying home at night." But Mike shook his head. "It's real. Last year, remember John from the farm? He disappeared one night. People said he heard a whisper and turned. Gone." Victor shrugged. "People leave towns all the time. Maybe he just moved away." The friends talked more, but nothing came of it. That night, Victor walked home alone. The streets were empty. The moon was full, shining on the road. He heard a soft sound, like wind, but then it was a whisper. "Victor," it said. He stopped. His heart beat a little faster, but he thought it was his imagination. He kept walking, not turning around. At home, he locked the door and went to bed. Nothing happened. The next day, everything was the same. Victor opened his shop, sewed some shirts, and helped a few customers. Mrs. Smith came in to pick up her dress. "Be careful at night, Victor," she said. "The legend is back." Victor smiled. "I'm not afraid of stories." But that evening, at the diner, Tom looked worried. "Hey guys, did you hear? Another man is missing, old Mr. Patel from the hardware store. He was out late last night." Mike nodded. "See, I told you, the shadow woman." They decided to look into it. But for now, they just ate their food and went home early. The town was quiet again. People started locking doors earlier. Kids were told not to play outside after dark. Victor thought about the whisper he heard. Was it real? He didn't know. Days passed like that. Nothing much changed. Victor sewed more clothes. Mike sold groceries. Tom fixed a car. The legend was talked about, but no one did anything big. One night, Victor was closing his shop late. The moon was out again. He heard the whisper once more. "Victor." This time it was closer. He felt cold air on his neck. But he remembered the legend. Don't turn around. He ran home without looking back. Inside, he breathed hard. This is getting weird, he thought. The next morning, he told his friends. They laughed at first, but then got serious. "We need to find out what's going on," Mike said, so they planned to stay out one night and see. But that was for later. Elmwood was as quiet as ever. The days dragged on, filled with the same old routines. Victor woke up, opened his tailor shop, and stitched a few shirts. Mike stacked cans of beans at the grocery store. Tom tightened bolts on a rusty truck. The town felt heavy, though, like everyone was waiting for something bad to happen. People whispered about the shadow woman at the diner, the gas station, even the library, where old Mrs. Carter shushed them for being too loud. Victor couldn't shake the memory of that whisper. Victor. It had been so soft, like a breath in his ear. He told himself it was just the wind, but he started closing his shop earlier, before the sun went down. He didn't want to hear it again. One evening, the three friends met at the diner. The red seats creaked as they sat down. Mr. Harris brought them coffee, his hands shaking a little. "You boys be careful out there," he said. "Another man's gone. Young Tim from the bakery. Vanished last night." Mike's eyes widened. "That's 3 this month. John, Mr. Patel, and now Tim. It's her, the shadow woman." Tom rolled his eyes. Maybe Tim just ran off with his girlfriend. People don't just vanish. But Victor wasn't so sure. "I heard it," he admitted, staring at his coffee. "The whisper. Twice now. I didn't turn around, but it felt real." Mike leaned forward. "We can't just sit here. Let's do something. Let's stay out tonight and see what happens." Victor frowned. "That sounds like a bad idea." "It's a great idea," Mike said, grinning. "We'll stick together. She won't take all 3 of us, right?" Tom sighed. "Fine, but if we get eaten by a ghost, I'm blaming you, Mike." They made a plan to meet at the park in the center of town at midnight. It was a full moon again, which made Victor nervous. The legend said she came during the full moon. But he didn't want to look scared in front of his friends, so he agreed. That night, the 3 of them stood in the park. The air was cold, and the moon lit up the grass and the old swings that creaked in the breeze. They brought flashlights and a baseball bat from Tom's garage just in case. Mike also had a bag of chips, which he was eating loudly. "Stop crunching," Victor whispered. "We're supposed to be listening." "For what? A ghost?" Tom said, swinging the bat like he was practicing for a game. "This is stupid. We're standing in a park like idiots." "Shh," Mike said, dropping a chip. "Listen." They stood still. The town was silent except for the wind in the trees. Victor's heart was beating fast. He kept his eyes on the ground, afraid to look around too much. Then they heard it, a soft sound like a sigh. "Mike," a voice whispered. Mike froze, his chips falling to the ground. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Don't turn around," Victor said quickly. "The legend says don't turn." "I'm not turning," Mike hissed, but he was shaking. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Mike." Tom gripped the bat. "This is crazy. Let's go." But before they could move, the air got colder. Victor felt it, like ice on his skin. He saw something from the corner of his eye, a shadow tall and thin standing near the trees. It didn't move, but it was there, watching them. He grabbed Mike's arm. "Don't look, just walk." They started walking back toward the street, trying not to run. The whisper followed them. "Mike," it said again, soft and close. Mike was breathing hard, clutching Victor's sleeve. Tom kept the bat up, looking ready to swing at nothing. They made it to the street, where the streetlights glowed yellow. The whisper stopped. The shadow was gone. They stood there, catching their breath. "What was that?" Mike asked, his voice small. "I don't know," Victor said. "But we're not doing that again." The next day, life went back to normal. Victor sewed a jacket. Mike sold milk and bread. Tom fixed a tire. But they were all quieter than usual. At the diner that evening, they didn't talk much. Mr. Harris brought them pie, but even he seemed nervous. "You boys saw something last night, didn't you?" he asked. Victor just nodded. He didn't want to talk about it. The town kept buzzing with stories. People said the shadow woman was angry, that she wanted more men. Some said she was a ghost. Others said she was something worse. Victor didn't know what to believe, but he started carrying a small knife in his pocket just in case. A week passed. Nothing happened. The full moon was gone and the nights were darker. Victor started to think maybe it was all in his head. But then, one night, he heard it again as he locked up his shop. "Victor!" The whisper was back. He ran inside and locked the door. His hands were shaking. He didn't sleep that night. Elmwood woke up to another gray morning. The air was chilly, and the streets were quiet as usual. Victor opened his tailor shop, but his hand shook as he threaded a needle. The whisper from last night, Victor, kept replaying in his head. He hadn't told Mike or Tom yet. He didn't want them to think he was scared, even though he was. At the grocery store, Mike was stacking cereal boxes, his eyes darting to the windows every few minutes. Tom was at his garage, wiping oil off his hands, muttering about how stupid it was to be afraid of a story. But none of them felt right. The town seemed smaller, like the trees around it were closing in. That evening, the three friends met at the diner again. The red seats were sticky, and the coffee was too cold. Mr. Harris was behind the counter, wiping the same spot over and over. "You boys look like you saw a ghost," he said, not smiling. "We didn't see anything," Tom snapped, but his voice wasn't as strong as usual. Victor leaned forward. "I heard it again last night. The whisper, my name." Mike dropped his spoon. "You serious? Why didn't you tell us?" "I'm telling you now," Victor said. "We need to figure this out, before one of us is next." Mike nodded. "We should talk to someone who knows about this stuff, like, really knows." "Like who?" Tom asked, rolling his eyes. "No one in this boring town knows anything." "There's Mrs. Grayson," Mike said. "The old lady by the church. People say she's been here forever. She knows all the old stories." Victor frowned. "She's creepy, always sitting on her porch staring at people." "Exactly," Mike said. "If anyone knows about the shadow woman, it's her." They agreed to visit Mrs. Grayson the next day. Victor wasn't thrilled, but he didn't have a better idea. That night, he double-checked his locks and kept a light on while he slept. Next morning was foggy. The friends walked to the edge of town where Mrs. Grayson's house stood. It was old, with peeling paint and a sagging porch. Mrs. Grayson was there, as always, sitting in a rocking chair. She was tiny, with white hair tied in a bun and eyes that seemed to see too much. A shawl covered her shoulders, even though it wasn't that cold. "What do you boys want?" she asked before they even reached the porch. Her voice was sharp, like she didn't have time for nonsense. Victor cleared his throat. "We, want to know about the shadow woman." Mrs. Grayson stopped rocking. Her eyes narrowed. "You heard her, didn't you?" Victor nodded slowly. "I heard my name. Twice." She stared at him, then at Mike and Tom. "Sit," she said, pointing to the porch steps. They sat like kids in trouble. Mrs. Grayson leaned forward. "The shadow woman ain't just a story, she's real. Been here longer than this town. Long ago her name was Clara. She lived here when Elmwood was just a few houses. She loved a man, but he betrayed her. Left her for another. Clara was so angry, she cursed this place. Said no man would ever be safe here again. Then she died, or so they thought. Now she comes back, every full moon, looking for men to take. I just swallowed hard. Take where?" Mrs. Grayson shrugged. "No one knows. They just vanish." Tom snorted. "That's it? A ghost story about a broken heart? Come on." Her eyes snapped to him. "Laugh all you want, boy. But she's watching. She knows your names. You heard her, didn't you?" Tom didn't answer. Victor felt a chill even in the foggy daylight. "How do we stop her?" he asked. Mrs. Grayson smiled, but it wasn't kind. "You don't stop her. You avoid her. Don't go out at night. Don't turn when you hear your name. And don't make her angry." "How do we make her angry?" Mike asked, his voice small. "By looking for her," she said. "By trying to fight her. She don't like that." The friends sat there quiet. The fog seemed thicker now. Victor wanted to ask more, but Mrs. Grayson started rocking again, like she was done talking. "Go home," she said, "and be careful." They walked back to town, not saying much. Victor's mind was racing. Clara? A curse? It sounded like something from a movie, but he couldn't forget the whisper. Mike kept looking over his shoulder. Tom kicked a rock, muttering about crazy old ladies. That evening at the diner, they tried to make sense of it. She's just trying to scare us, Tom said, but he didn't sound sure. What if? She's right, Mike said. What if we're next? Victor stirred his coffee. We need to know more. Maybe there's something in the library, old newspapers or something. Mike nodded. Yeah, maybe there's a clue about Clara. Tom groaned. You guys are obsessed. Fine, I'll go to the library, but I'm not reading ghost stories all day. They agreed to check the library tomorrow. For now, they finished their food and went home early. Victor walked fast, his knife in his pocket. The streets were empty, but he felt watched. No whisper came, but the silence was almost worse. The next day, life went on. Victor fixed a pair of jeans. Mike sold some apples. Tom worked on a car engine. But they all knew something was wrong in Elmwood. The air felt heavy, like a storm was coming, even though the sky was clear. The morning in Elmwood was the same as always. Gray clouds hung low, and a light drizzle made the streets shiny. Victor opened his tailor shop, but he barely focused on sewing. His mind was stuck on Mrs. Grayson's story about Clara, the woman who became the Shadow Woman. It sounded like a fairy tale, but the whispers he'd heard felt too real to ignore. Mike was at the grocery store, arranging cans of soup, but he kept dropping them. His hands were shaky, and he jumped every time the store's bell rang. Tom was in his garage, fixing a car's brakes, but he kept glancing at the door, like something might walk in. The whole town felt off, like everyone was holding their breath. That afternoon, the three friends met at the Elmwood Library. It was a small building next to the park, with dusty windows and shelves that smelled like old paper. Mrs. Carter, the librarian, sat at the front desk, her glasses low on her nose. She looked up as they walked in. "What do you boys want?" she asked, suspicious. "We're looking for old town records," Victor said. "Newspapers, maybe. From a long time ago." Mrs. Carter raised an eyebrow. "What for?" Mike blurted, "The Shadow Woman. We're trying to find out about her." Mrs. Carter's face tightened. "Don't mess with things you don't understand," she said, but she pointed to a corner. "Old papers are back there. Don't make a mess." The friends went to the back, where boxes of yellowed newspapers and town records were stacked. The air was musty and the light was dim. They split up, each taking a box. Victor flipped through brittle pages, scanning headlines about crop prices and town fairs. Mike sneezed from the dust. Tom grumbled, "This is a waste of time. Hours passed." They found nothing but boring stories about Elmwood's past. New shops opening, a bridge built, a fire in 1950. Victor was about to give up when he found a small article from 1895, tucked in a crumbling newspaper. "Guys, look at this," he said. The article was short. It said a woman named Clara Hayes had died in Elmwood under strange circumstances. She was young, lived alone, and was engaged to a man named William Reed. But William left her for another woman, and Clara was found dead soon after, near the old oak tree in the park. The article didn't say how she died, just that the town was troubled by it. "That's her," Mike whispered. "Clara, the Shadow Woman." Tom frowned. "It doesn't say she's a ghost. Maybe she just died." "There's more," Victor said. He pointed to a line at the end. "Some claim Clara's anger lingers in the town, tied to the oak tree where she was last seen." Mike's eyes widened. "The oak tree in the park? The big one by the swings?" Victor nodded. "We were there. That night, when we heard the whisper." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms. "So what? We go chop down a tree? That's dumb." "No," Victor said. "But maybe there's something at the tree. Something she's tied to." Mike looked nervous. "Like what, her ghost? A cursed ring? This is getting creepy." They kept searching, but found nothing else about Clara. Mrs. Carter shooed them out when the library closed. "Don't go poking around where you shouldn't," she warned, locking the door. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, but the air was cold. The park was across the street, and the oak tree loomed in the distance, its branches like dark fingers against the gray sky. Victor felt a knot in his stomach. "We should check the tree," he said. "Now?" Mike squeaked. "It's getting dark." "Tomorrow," Tom said. I'm not wandering around at night again, not after last time. They agreed to meet the next day during daylight. Victor went home, his mind spinning. Clara Hayes, a broken heart, a tree. It didn't add up, but it was the only clue they had. That night, Victor locked his doors and windows. He kept his knife on the nightstand. The moon wasn't full anymore, but he still felt watched. He didn't hear a whisper, but he dreamed of a woman in a long dress, standing by the oak tree, her face hidden in shadow. The next day, life went on. Victor sewed a dress for Mrs. Smith. Mike sold bread and eggs. Tom fixed a flat tire. But they all thought about the tree. At noon, they met in the park, standing under the oak. It was huge, its bark rough and knotted. The ground around it was bare, like nothing wanted to grow there. Victor knelt and poked at the dirt with a stick. "Maybe there's something buried here," he said. Mike looked around, nervous. "Like a body? I don't want to dig up a body." Tom kicked the tree. "This is stupid, it's just a tree." But then Victor's stick hit something hard. He dug a little, and there was a small metal box, rusted and old. His heart raced. "Guys, look." They crowded around as he pried it open. Inside was a locket, silver and tarnished, with a tiny picture of a woman and a man. The woman had dark hair and sad eyes. The man looked smug. "That's got to be Clara," Mike said, "and William, the jerk who left her." "What do we do with it?" Tom asked. Victor closed the box. "We take it to Mrs. Grayson. Maybe she knows what it means." They left the park, the locket heavy in Victor's pocket. The town felt quieter than ever, like it was waiting. Victor didn't like it. Neither did Mike or Tom, though they didn't say it. That evening at the diner, they sat in silence, the locket on the table. Mr. Harris glanced at it but didn't ask. "Be careful, boys," was all he said. Victor nodded. He didn't know what the locket meant, but he knew it was important, and he had a bad feeling it wasn't over yet. Elmwood woke to another dull day. The sky was gray and a light wind rustled the leaves. Victor opened his tailor shop, but he didn't touch his sewing machine. The locket from the oak tree sat in his pocket, heavy as a stone. He kept checking it, half expecting it to vanish. Mike was at the grocery store, shelving canned peaches, but he kept glancing at the door like something might walk in. Tom was in his garage, tinkering with a carburetor, but his heart wasn't in it. The town felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next man to disappear. At noon, the three friends met outside Victor's shop. The locket was in a small cloth bag, as if hiding it made it less creepy. "We need to show this to Mrs. Grayson," Victor said. "She'll know what it is." Mike nodded, but his face was pale. "What if it's cursed? Maybe we shouldn't touch it." Tom snorted. "It's a locket, not a bomb. Let's just get this over with." They walked to Mrs. Grayson's house at the edge of town. The streets were quiet, with only a few people out, hurrying like they didn't want to be seen. The old woman's house looked the same, peeling paint, sagging porch, and Mrs. Grayson in her rocking chair, wrapped in her shawl. Her eyes locked on them before they reached the steps. "You found something," she said, not a question. Her voice was sharp, like she already knew. Victor pulled out the cloth bag and opened it, showing the locket. "We found this under the oak tree, in a box. We think it's Clara's." Mrs. Grayson stopped rocking. She leaned forward, her hands gripping the chair. "Let me see." Victor handed it over, careful not to touch her fingers. She opened the locket, stared at the tiny picture of Clara and William, and sighed. "This is hers, Clara Hayes. That fool William broke her heart, and this locket held her pain." Mike shifted nervously. "What does that mean?" Mrs. Grayson closed the locket with a snap. Clara poured her anger into this. When she cursed the town, this locket tied her spirit to Elmwood. As long as it's here, she'll keep coming. Back, taking men who remind her of William. Victor's stomach twisted. "Taking them where?" "No one knows," Mrs. Grayson said. "Some say she traps their souls. Others say she just makes them disappear. Either way, they're gone." Tom crossed his arms. "So what? We throw it in the river and call it a day?" She glared at him. You don't just toss a curse away, boy. You have to break it. There's a ritual, but it's dangerous. What kind of ritual? Victor asked, his voice low. Mrs. Grayson looked at the locket, then at them. You need to burn the locket under the oak tree at midnight during the next full moon. But it's not simple. You need salt to protect you, and you have to say her name, Clara Hayes, 3 times. If you do it right, her spirit might leave. If you do it wrong, she trailed off, her eyes dark. What happens if we do it wrong? Mike asked, almost whispering. She gets angry, Mrs. Grayson said, and an angry spirit takes more than one man. The friends stood there, silent. The wind felt colder now. Victor took the locket back, slipping it into the bag. When's the next full moon? He asked. 3 days, Mrs. Grayson said. You'd better be ready. They thanked her and left, walking back to town. Mike kept looking over his shoulder. This is bad. Burning a locket, saying her name. What if we mess it up? We won't, Victor said, trying to sound sure. We'll do exactly what she said. Tom kicked a pebble. This is crazy. Rituals? Salt? I feel like we're in a bad movie. They stopped at the diner for coffee. The red seats were empty, and Mr. Harris was wiping the counter, his hands slower than usual. You boys look spooked, he said. Victor didn't answer. He just sipped his coffee, the locket heavy in his pocket. Mike ate a piece of pie but didn't finish it. Tom stared out the window, tapping his foot. The next 2 days were the same. Victor fixed a shirt, but he kept dropping his needle. Mike sold milk and eggs, but he forgot to ring up a customer. Tom worked on a car but left a wrench on the ground. The town was quiet, but the air felt thick, like before a storm. On the 3rd day, they prepared. Mike bought a bag of salt from the grocery store. Tom found a lighter in his garage. Victor kept the locket safe, checking it every hour. They agreed to meet at the oak tree at 11:30 that night, before the full moon hit its peak. That evening, Victor sat in his shop staring at the locket. He opened it again, looking at Clara's face. Her eyes seemed to follow him. He closed it fast and shoved it in his pocket. This better work, he muttered. At 11:00 he locked his shop and walked to the park. The streets were empty, the moon bright and round. Mike and Tom were already there, standing under the oak tree. Mike held the bag of salt, his hands shaking. Tom had the lighter, flipping it open and closed. You ready? Victor asked. No, Mike said. But let's do it. They waited, watching the moon climb higher. The park was silent, the swing still. Victor's heart pounded. He didn't want to hear the whisper again, but he knew it was coming. Elmwood was quieter than ever that night. The full moon hung low, casting a pale glow over the town. Victor stood under the oak tree in the park, clutching the cloth bag with the locket. His hands were sweaty, and his heart thumped like a drum. Mike was next to him, holding a bag of salt, his eyes darting around like a scared mouse. Tom held the lighter, flipping it open and shut, muttering about how dumb this was. The air was cold, and the swings in the park creaked softly. In the breeze, it was 11:45 p.m. The ritual was supposed to start at midnight. Victor checked his watch again. We need to do this right, he said. Mrs. Grayson said salt, burn the locket, say her name 3 times, no mistakes. Mike nodded, spilling a little salt on the ground. Oops, sorry, I'm nervous. Tom rolled his eyes. You're always nervous. Let's just burn this thing and go home. I've got a car to fix tomorrow. Victor ignored him and poured a circle of salt around the base of the oak tree, like Mrs. Grayson had told them. The ground was dry, and the salt looked like a thin white ring in the moonlight. He placed the locket in the center, open to show Clara's picture. Her eyes seemed to glow, but he told himself it was just the moon. Okay, Victor said, his voice shaky. We wait till midnight. They stood inside the salt circle, watching the shadows. The park was empty, but it didn't feel that way. Victor kept his knife in his pocket, just in case. Mike clutched the salt bag like it was a lifeline. Tom flicked the lighter, the tiny flame dancing in his hand. At midnight, Victor took a deep breath. Here we go, Clara Hayes. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the wind. Mike swallowed hard. Clara Hayes, he whispered. Tom sighed. Clara Hayes. This better work. The air got colder, like someone opened a freezer. The moonlight dimmed and the shadows around the tree grew darker, thicker. Victor's skin prickled. Light it, he told Tom. Tom knelt and held the lighter to the locket. The flame caught the edge of the picture, and it started to burn, curling black. The smell of smoke filled the air. But then they heard it, a whisper, soft and close. Victor, Mike yelped and dropped the salt bag. She's here. Don't turn around, Victor shouted. He grabbed Mike's arm, pulling him back into the circle. The whisper came again, louder. Mike! Tom stood up, lighter still, in his hand. This is bad, he said, his voice shaking for the first time. The flame on the locket flickered like something was trying to put it out. The shadow was there now, at the edge of the circle. It was tall, thin, with a shape like a woman in a long dress. Her face was hidden, but her eyes glowed faintly, like two white sparks. She didn't move, just stood there, watching. Keep going, Victor said. He grabbed the lighter from Tom and held it to the locket again. The picture burned faster, but the shadow moved closer, just outside the salt circle. The whisper turned into a low wail. Tom! Tom backed up, tripping over a root. I didn't sign up for this, he yelled. Don't leave the circle. Victor shouted. Mrs. Grayson said to stay inside. Mike was shaking, muttering. We messed up, we messed up. The shadow reached out, her hand like a claw, but she stopped at the salt line. The wail grew louder, making Victor's ears hurt. The locket was almost gone now, just a pile of ash and melted silver. Victor dropped the lighter and stomped on the ashes, hoping it was enough. The shadow screamed, a sound that made the ground shake. The swings in the park swung wildly like someone was pushing them. Then silence. The shadow was gone. The air warmed up, and the moonlight returned. Victor's heart was still racing. Mike was on his knees, breathing hard. Tom stood frozen, staring at the spot where the shadow had been. Is it over? Mike asked, his voice small. Victor looked at the ashes. I think so. They stepped out of the salt circle, careful not to break it. The park was normal again, just a quiet night in Elmwood. They didn't say much as they walked back to town. Victor's legs felt heavy, like he'd run a mile. Mike kept looking over his shoulder. Tom was quiet, which wasn't like him. The next morning, Elmwood went back to normal. Victor opened his shop and sewed a pair of pants, his hands still a little shaky. Mike stacked apples at the grocery store, smiling at customers like nothing had happened. Tom fixed a car's muffler, grumbling about the cold. The town felt lighter, like a weight was gone. At the diner that evening, Mr. Harris brought them coffee. Heard you boys were out late, he said, raising an eyebrow. Victor shrugged. Just taking a walk. Mr. Harris didn't push it. The friends ate their burgers in silence, but they kept glancing at each other, like they shared a secret no one else would believe. Days passed. No one disappeared. The whispers stopped. People started going out at night again, and kids played in the park. Victor walked by the oak tree one day, and it looked like any other tree. Big, old, nothing special. The salt circle was gone, washed, away by rain. But sometimes, late at night, Victor would wake up thinking he heard his name. He never turned around, just in case. Mike started carrying salt in his pocket, saying it was for seasoning. Tom laughed it off, but he stopped working late in his garage. Mrs. Grayson didn't say much when they saw her next. She just nodded, like she knew what they'd done. You boys did all right, she said, then went back to rocking on her porch. Elmwood stayed quiet. Life went on, dull, slow, and normal. But Victor, Mike, and Tom never forgot that night. And they never walked through the park alone after dark.